They'll now be recorded. We're going to start with our roll call for District 1,
Peter Patrick for District 1.
District 2, yours truly, District 3,
Ralph Dennis, present.
District 4. I believe Mr. Chambers is coming on. District 5,
Renee Scribe, present.
thank you. District 6,
Hi, Scott Richmond, present.
nice Scott. District 7,
Dawn DeShawn Fewer, present.
and our at-large members,
Sarah White, present.
Nigeria Rolling Forward, present.
thank you, everyone. Everyone has a copy of today's agenda, and we're going to just proceed as it is provided. Going to review and approve the October 16th, 2023 minutes. You've had opportunity to read the minutes. Is there a motion to, is there any discussion, or is there a motion to approve minutes?
No discussion.
There's no discussion. I entertain a motion.
I move that the minutes for the October 16th meeting be approved as presented.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. There's no question, no discussion. The meetings will hereby be adopted. Under our new business, I'm sorry, administrative updates. I'm moving a little too quickly.
It's all right. Thank you.
Henry?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just very briefly looking at the 2024 calendar, the following a similar schedule to the one we adopted back in the spring of this year. We're looking at as the sort of the quarterly dates, again, acknowledging there will be additional meetings as called by the chair and as on an as needed basis for things like selecting trial board members. The first would be March 18th. And then looking at June 24th, now that's the fourth Monday, but the week before that's the week of Juneteenth, which is on Wednesday. But I know that some folks, again, there are events, there are differences with different jobs as far as when they have that day off and available. So moving that to the 24th to avoid conflict with that week. And then September 16th, November 18th. Again, that would be the equivalent to this meeting for the purposes of reviewing next year's annual report. And that's kind of an extra meeting, but it's one that's sort of baked in. And then December 16th of 2024. All of those, as of now, we'd be looking at the same time and place, 12 p.m. in room 118. Again, that's subject to change depending on the availability of this room, which went through a recent rehab. So hopefully it's going to be available for regular meetings, but and then also again, acknowledging there may be additional meetings depending on the need or the sort of the I guess need's the best word. I'll leave it at that.
And they're going to be 12 o'clock?
12 o'clock, not at 1, 12 o'clock.
Well, okay.
But again, that is subject to change based on factors both within and outside of this group's control, depending on this room's availability. So that will be the tentative schedule for next year based on the chair and my discussion about availability of the room and the chair's approval. But Bishop Dennis, you want to move to?
I move that we accept the schedule for next year's meetings as given to us by our Henry Caligari.
Second.
Properly moved in second. Is there any question? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye. The ayes have it. It's been moved, seconded, and properly adopted. And so our new schedule for 2024 has been adopted. Thank you, everyone. Now we move to our new business, and we're going to ask Major, I wanted to make sure I had the proper title, to give us an update on our internal affairs. And thank you for coming today.
Thank you for the input.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
So I was asked to bring some statistics and some general knowledge of the Internal Affairs Division for Baltimore County Police Department. So I'm prepared to do that, and certainly if there's questions or however I can help, please let me know. So as you know, the legislative changes put in place this body and the ACC as well, and it did change some of the discipline process that the department had historically worked under. And given that the types of cases that we investigate, the biggest and easiest ones to delineate are administrative complaints. Those are complaints that happen against the department that don't really touch anything outside the department. And then community complaints, ones that do involve a member of the public. Those are the biggest changes. Before we had some other subcategories. And the reason I say all that is because it makes it hard to compare apples to apples. But in doing our best to do so, we as the agency, the exec corps has been, captains and up have been under the new process since July 1st, 22. The line level from officer through lieutenant has been under the process as it is written in law since July 1st of 2023. So we're almost 5 months in, 6 months into the new process. But as we grow and as we learn, I communicate frequently with Henry, and largely it's been smooth, and appreciate the working relationship. Our statistics for this year, as we on the calendar year, so obviously we would be split before and after July 1st, but in totality, 2023 total cases received by the Internal Affairs Division, 187. This was as of yesterday. 2022, same time frame, 148. 148 for 2022, 187 for 2023. Difference of 39 cases, about 26%. So that's one of the things that's driving our workflow and our time management in my division. Of course, some of the other parameters placed by legislation also dictates those things too. Historically, minor complaints that were received, whether they involved a member of the public or not, we had an option to, I use the term fast track loosely, but easily contact if a matter of discourtesy or something somewhat minor. The commander of that person and myself could easily consult, offer discipline, and for lack of a better term, have the whole case resolved within an afternoon. And now, obviously, a formal investigation is completed, interviews, if required, are done, and all that goes into a report of investigation. It does get reviewed at several levels, including mine, before it makes it to the ACC for members for issues involving a member of the public. So that's the roll number there. There have been, at least from what we can gauge coming in since July 1st, about 75 cases that we believe will end up at the ACC. To date, I think we've only sent over six that have been heard anyway. Yeah, there's some more that were sent last week, and some more probably come over this week. And I'm constantly keeping my eye on the timetable, but if you think of the calendar like a clock, most of the cases we are investigating right now or triaging occurred in the April-May timeframe of the year. Obviously, it's important to handle those within the year and a day that's prescribed by law. And so, generally speaking, the older cases are handled first. Sometimes something comes through and it's easy enough to handle, or I have an opportunity to get that on, and a lot of what we've seen already has kind of been in that vein. So I imagine that the interworkings between my group and the ACC will become a little bit more complex, or have more communication, I would say. Some of the ones we've sent over have been rather short, and some of those dynamics will be changed. I think to date we've had 4 that I understand have come through the PAB's complaint system or routing. 2 of those are cases that will likely be heard by the ACC. I have two others, one that was solved as a result as a public inquiry where the complainant, once we made contact with them and explained policy, was satisfied. And another that, that had to do with a different case. So, that's kind of I guess, a 30,000 foot view, and if there's something that I can help, the group understand, at least from my side, I'd be happy to.
Well, thank you for the information. Thank you for the updates as well, statistics. And is there anyone on the, from the board who would have a question to present to the major at this time?
I wanted to ask about the website. It currently just outlines what looks to be non-community complaints. It doesn't give the flow of the ACC, the current
The
website.
department website,
Mhm.
Is it going to be updated?
that's a good question. I can look into that. So I do know that we get them quite frequently through that portal. Um, I, I believe it is working, even if it's not outlined as intended.
I was also wondering on the check on status of complaints, I know you can't show us, but what does a member of the public see if they do click that? How much detail do they get if they want to check on the
It's
status?
rather
of their complaint?
generic. It'll show whether it's been assigned or if it's under investigation, if it's open. The nuances of every step of an investigation are not outlined.
Mhm.
And then if it's been resolved, then it's being sent to the ACC, that would show as well.
Okay,
And then, of course, afterwards, that the communication is pretty timely. I know the ACC sends something, my office sends something to a complainant, and to the accused as well. So, unless discipline is rendered, then obviously there's an appeal process for that. So we wouldn't prematurely call the case closed until that is outlined. So
thank you.
Would you, the bump in cases, do you attribute that entirely to just changes in reporting requirements or anything else you're seeing there?
that's what I would attribute it to. There's not really anything else that I can think of that's been a big change. So I would
Same
equate
kinds
it
of
to
cases, just.
same sort of cases, right?
changes in reporting.
As far as the workflow and uh, the speed with which some of them are completed and handled, it mainly comes back to now it just takes longer so that all those things can be memorialized so that then a group who is unfamiliar with all the pieces can then review it and make their determination. So, and of course, there's 30 days built in that, right? So even if we gave it to you on day one, then it'll be 30 days later. So those extend timeframes too.
And just in general, obviously, police department in general is a little undermanned. How are you guys for resources in internal affairs these days?
That's a good question. Yeah, that's a very good
Oh,
question.
sorry.
Yeah, it's no secret. So the department, we're working hard to restaff. We've hit some prime retirement dates in the past couple of years. And then, between that and just other factors, I think in our field in general, candidates are hard to come by. And when I came on the job, competed for a number of different departments. Now the departments are competing for the candidates. And so certainly we want good candidates, but that does bring into account the department shortages. I would say that largely my shop has been maintained a pretty consistent staffing level. And so I know that it's one of the chief's priorities to make sure that we're able to have the staff to be able to get cases done in time, in a timely fashion. I didn't share it yet, but the closed statistics are also something that we've worked hard on as well. And again, it's a little bit of apples and oranges, but year to date, 2023, we've closed 163 cases. And this time last year was 131. So again, can't say it's an exact perfect comparison, but it gives you an idea where we're at. And I've only been here 2 months in this role, but recognizing that we have a tidal wave, if you will, or just a larger, different workflow coming, we really need to get things cleared out. So there's been a lot of effort towards that. So we've been pretty successful lately, just in finding the cases that were not going to be as time consuming and pushing those forward.
Do you see that there appear to be any trends this year with the reporting of the type of incidents? Anything that appears to be more common to be reported than anything else?
So I think some of the common ones may always be the common one, right? The matters of discourtesy, or at least perceived that way. So some are and some are not. Some of the body camera violations, like that's something that we have a very complex policy for the use of body cameras. And sometimes I think we should just turn it on and let it run, right? Like, but at the same time, there are aspects of some investigations. There's certainly personal times through the day where you can't let that run, and there are dynamics where they have a cost to them as well. It's a lot of data, and all that costs time and money to maintain too. So I understand why there is times to turn it on, turn it off, but that's one of the things that we see common. I don't get the sense that there's a collective folding of the arms by the officers out there that we're not doing this. I think generally what we see is that it was, likely forgotten, or whatever the call dynamics were, that they didn't get to that fast enough. So that's another one. Some of the investigative claims, whether something was or wasn't investigated correctly, I almost feel like that's par for the course, because that's what we do. So somebody's not going to complain to us for something that generally isn't something that the police department does. And investigations is what we do. So I think that would be a fair avenue for complaint. So
Thank you.
hope sure.
Anyone else? Thank you for coming.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
for your time and the information. Invite you back again.
Certainly. And
Stay in
please let me know.
Will do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Okay. You're in the button. Move on.
Yeah, that's okay.
Closed.
Henry's going to proceed with the review of our draft. Make sure everyone knows it's a draft and the report for comments. Thanks, Henry.
Great. So, thank you, Madam Chair. And so we've handed these out, and drafts will be available on the PAB website as well. This is the 2023 annual report, and I want to emphasize the term draft because obviously it has not been presented to members of the entire board until today, so we're not going to be moving forward with adopting it today. But this is the work, and really I want to give a tremendous amount of credit to Madam Chair and Don Deshawn Fuhrer and Carol White, who volunteered to sit on the drafting committee to take the first crack at this report. And that involved reviewing what other jurisdictions have put forward in last year, so prior years being last year, looking at our own information, looking at what Baltimore County, the PAB put out last year as well, and essentially attempting to put together a report that is both straightforward, that includes all the required information, but is also useful for not only the policymakers to which the report is directed by the statute, that being the county executive and the county council, but also something from which members of the public can gain additional information as to the process and the results. So with Madam Chair's permission, I'll just walk through this and then discuss the next steps. So first is a letter from Madam Chair, Director of the County Executive and the County Council that again reflects the work of the PAB over the last year, as well as the additional work the chair has undertaken to ensure the PAB is moving forward. That includes, as we discussed in the last meeting, a regional summit with other police accountability chairs and coordinators, as well as again, working with the Equitable Policing Task Force through Baltimore County as well. The next section is a statutory rundown of the history, purpose, and the requirements both at the state and local level of the Police Accountability Board and the Administrative Charging Committee. This information is, again, a distillation of what is in the state and county statutes, which are again, like any statute, they are long, they are written in a legal fashion. But my goal and our goal here is to make sure this report includes information that's easy to understand, especially as this law is still relatively new, and to make sure the members of the public, whether they be actively following this process or someone who is interested in learning more about it, somebody who is maybe, again, interested in filing a complaint, doesn't understand the process, doesn't know it off the top, this provides that information. You'll notice that throughout this document, which has been printed, there are some blue underlined text. The web version will be accessible so that a member of anyone who's reading this, if they click on, for instance, on page 4, the top HB 0670, that if they click on it, will go to the statute itself. That will go to the state statute. Same with bill number 2422, which is the county statute. That will go to it so they can get a direct link to it rather than having to search online, which again, is not something that's very easy to do unless you know what you're looking for. So the goal there is to make sure this is an accessible document and that it's something where they're not just being told, members of the public or the members of the council, hey, here's the name of the bill, look it up. You can actually find it there. On page 6, there is a rundown of members of both the PAB and the Administrative Charging Committee. If there's something in here which is incorrect that you notice in regard particularly to profession, which I think is worth noting so that members of the public can get an idea of the background of the folks who are on the PAB and the ACC, please let me know if that's does not accurately reflect what you would want to have in there. And then it also identifies myself and Ms. LaValle, the executive secretary, too. Page 7, and this will be updated with the information from this meeting and the upcoming meetings as well, is again links to the recordings of each meetings, the agendas, the minutes. There was a technical error on the August 18th ACC meeting. There are minutes for that. It was actually a very brief meeting. No cases were heard. There's technical error with the recording there, which failed to be uploaded. And again, the minutes, we began having official minutes starting back in March. So everything from March, going forward on that will be included. The November 20th meeting will also include a link to the recording, the agenda, the minutes, as will the December meetings as well. And there's a link to the PAB website to find that information directly. And just again, it's useful to have that in there. The next page includes what I think is an incredibly useful visual guide for people like myself who are visual learners. And it is from the Maryland Police and Correctional Training Commission rundown of how the process plays out. And I think this is extremely useful because not only does it show the process in a visual way, but it also provides links to the Maryland, not links in this case, but it provides citations to the Maryland Public Safety article, which is the section of the Maryland Code that the statute is located in essentially. So it gives a good, I find a very clear indication of how the process goes from complaint to disposition. And again, with those citations, people can look it up and get additional information on that. Turning to page 9, which is really where it gets into, I think, some of the most useful information in the report. The review of disciplinary matters. Again, there's a December 8th section, which has not been filled in yet, but this includes the date of the meeting from the ACC, the number of cases reviewed, the lead complaint in each case. So the reason why that was, yes. Let me just wait 1 second. Sorry.
This is really helpful for me. This document.
Sorry about that, folks. So the lead complaint, again, the reason why that information was chosen is that in some of these complaints, there are there is what is the complaint, and Dawn can speak to this. But then there's really also there's additional kind of commentary, and in order to protect the confidentiality of both the officer and the complainant, we wanted to make sure in assembling this, that while the information of the complaint is included, there's not details that would potentially disclose that person's identification. We don't want to stifle the public by thinking that everything that they include is going to be put in this. We want to make sure that the confidentiality is maintained. And then it has the outcomes of these cases, whether or not the officer was charged and whether or not there was an allegation of use of force. As again, those are cases that I think are going to have particular focus on members of the public, and again, helps to provide a little bit of additional information. And then the bottom of that page, that this information will be provided on December 1st once there is a monthly report generated by Internal Affairs that really goes over what Major Gorman had said in large part, which is that as of December 1st, X number of complaints have been received and X number of investigations have been completed. Again, I think that that is, again, very useful information here. And then the final side of it, page 10, which goes over the trial boards. This is also something I could have mentioned, the administrative update. The trial board that this body voted to appoint a civilian member to in November has been rescheduled to January. There's no changes in regards to the case from what I can tell, but it was moved to January for scheduling conflict purposes. And so again, we'll be working as of December 1st because that will be the last date we probably would get a request from. And it's noted that that's under the new disciplinary process because for cases where line officers that originated prior to July 1, 23, those, and for command level before July 1, 22, those are still, those trial boards are held under the prior system. So then there's the trends in discipline section. I won't necessarily speak on that. I'll ask Madam Chair to, and the policy recommendations, because those were decisions that were, that the inclusion of those was addressed by the members of the drafting committee. It was not something where I was involved with that, involved with the decision to include or not include trends and policy recommendations, but that is one of the significant elements of the annual report per statute is what the Police Accountability Board deems to include regarding trends to identify to the policymakers, and then of course also recommended changes to the statute, whether that be the local council resolution or the statewide legislation. So Madam Chair, and again, also Kara and Dawn, if you want to speak to the trends and the policy recommendation sections.
Sure. We felt it necessary at least to have a section for trends so that it didn't appear that it was something that we just overlooked or failed to include. But because we don't have data in order to review sufficient to determine if there are such any trends at all, we didn't think that it would be, didn't think it would be impossible for us to put in data here. But we did want to include this so that going forward, we would expect that the same information would be included, but that those trends would be identified and would also be in the report. And with policy recommendations, Dawn, would you like to speak on some of those things we discussed regarding the policy recommendations?
Let me just review this because this was something I had to wrap my brain around anyway. Hold on one second.
We went over this in
Yeah. I'm
Is
trying to
this
figure out-
the year and a
it's
day?
It's a timeline issue.
Kara, do you want to?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I would say this is the year and a day discussion that we were having with internal affairs.
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
yes.
Okay, so this is the, we have a year and a day from receiving the initial investigation to determine if something has occurred. If it's over that year and a day, then then what happens? We have to, it ends the case, correct? At this current moment, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
so
so
the
I
case.
can speak to the statutory provision on it just to give an idea
Please
as
do,
to the background. So under the present law, from the date that a complaint is received, the entire process from if it comes to the PAB portal for it to be referred out to the department, through the department's investigation and to disposition by the ACC is a year and a day. The statute does not state what happens after a year and a day. And there is, and Linda can speak to this from the conversation that we had with the other PAB chairs and coordinators. There is concern that if there is a simultaneous criminal investigation, that if the officer in the case that the complaint has been received in is also under criminal investigation, that creates both practical timeline issues, but also evidentiary issues, where if the department and the state's attorney's office choose to charge an officer while that complaint is being reviewed, certain information may not, for instance, officer statements may not be available to internal affairs for the purposes of the administrative investigation. The concern that's spelled out in writing here, and I don't mean to speak for anybody here, but just again, what was in writing, the concern is that if an officer is under criminal investigation and therefore there's a lack of information in the administrative investigation because that information could come up in the criminal case and it's not ready to be disclosed for the purposes of the criminal case, just again, based on that side of things, that the ACC may not receive a very complete report, essentially, that if the officer doesn't get a statement, if there is discovery issues between the state attorney's office and the defense attorney for the officer, that they may get a very bare bones report and not be able to, based on what they have, make a determination the officer should be administratively charged. The
Right. And we're
concern
looking
then
at
is-
wrongful, some type of wrongful exoneration or some type of wrongful, yeah. Yeah.
Right. So if they don't get administratively charged, then there is no means by which the department can ever again, based on that complaint, discipline the officer. And so if it's been a year and a day and the ACC doesn't have sufficient information and the officer is exonerated, and then if in the criminal case, the officer is not, the jury or the judge, the finder of fact, determines that there's not enough for a criminal conviction, then the officer in that circumstance would not be able to be disciplined. The concern that other jurisdictions raised and that the charging committee or this drafting committee believed made some sense was that there needs to be a means by which, if it's a criminal investigation, the ACC can still ultimately get a complete file to make a determination. And the thought was that the solution, I'll turn it over to Linda, is to the proposed solution that the drafting committee determined. And this would need to be changed at the state level. This would not be a county change, but nonetheless, still was thought to include it in here.
Sure. So at the meetings that we've had with our counterparts across the state, everyone raised the same issue, that this is definitely a gap or loophole, whatever you want to call it, was something that was overlooked by the legislature. So the legislature would have to fix it. The fix that we see as a collective would be that there would be an exception to the year and a day based on criminal investigation cases so that we wouldn't run into a situation where an officer who is administratively being under investigation, but that investigation can't go forward because there's a criminal investigation going forward. That criminal investigation ends in a not guilty, but our year and a day administratively is gone. Then that's it's not fair. It's not fair for the department, for those persons who have made these allegations. It's not fair even that to believe that a proper investigation could take place because it was halted. So in all fairness to all parties involved, and we think because the legislature is just something that they overlooked. They had these matters in place and there was an exception in past statute that did cover the year and a day circumstance where criminal charges were pending, but it didn't get included in the current statute. So the collective agreement belief is that proposal be made so the legislature looks at this to put a fix in so that these matters won't just fall through the cracks, and that where discipline needs to be needed and discipline does occur, and that the department isn't left out of that process.
So that was the only policy recommendation that the drafting committee considered at this time. And I will say, sharing personally, I've received and I passed this information on to the drafting committee and Madam Chair. Every jurisdiction that surrounds Baltimore County that we've been working with has flagged that issue and identified it as a concern. So it's not something where Baltimore County is alone in our PAB identifying this as an issue. It's a common concern. And again, sort of the nature of legislation when it's first passed is that there are areas that in practice require revisiting. So that is the sum and substance of the report. I encourage everyone on the PAB and also members of the public to review it in detail. The thought procedurally is that we wanted to make sure that all members of the PAB had that this month. The next PAB meeting is on December 18th, and that would be the actual vote for adoption of the report. The Madam Chair and I think, Madam Chair, you expressed this desire that this is sufficient time for the members of the PAB to essentially come up with any sort of changes, additions, removing things, adding additional policy recommendations. So the thought being that those members could send that information, could present information at the next meeting. What I would ask is that if you have something which you say, I'd like to recommend another policy change, if you could send that to me in email, that way I can have the opportunity to work with you to draft language that would be able to be added to the report. So that way it's clear and concise and there's not a question at the next meeting of what is being proposed or how does it need to be worded. And additionally to, if there's a legal question that comes along with that, to refer to the Office of Law and Ms. Glenn to make sure that we're not running afoul of some other aspect of this statute or some other one. That's not to say that, I'm definitely not sitting here to say, oh, we're not going to include that. I don't like that. That's not my position. My position is send it over so it can be drafted and discussed and voted on in a way that can be added to the report, even just from a formatting standpoint, so that way, when it's voted on December 20th, if there are changes, that we'll be able to approve the report, have it be ready to go and sent over to the county executive and the county council.
And as a subcommittee, we really wanted to do our best in presenting a draft that you would be able to look at and be able to work off of to give as much information as being consistent with the other jurisdictions as well, but as much information as we possibly could to have you have some starting point and understanding of what was going to be in the report, in addition to if there was a question you had or there was a recommendation that you had, you wanted it added, it would give us enough time to add that in, or we make a determination based on other policies or procedures that it could or couldn't be added in. But this would give us enough time. And these are all of the subject matters and titles and sections that other reports including that we included in our report of last year. So we thank you for and we welcome your comments and your critiques and any information that you think that we may have omitted that warrants inclusion. We would appreciate you letting us know in ample time that we can make this a final draft in December. Okay, thanks everyone.
Were there,
Yes.
were there any other, in your communication with other boards, any other trends identified or legislative issues identified that, because we were kind of earlier, we're kind of a little bit earlier than some boards in terms of like doing ACC and stuff. So is there anything else people see?
So we met back in October. So the other boards had not prepared their annual reports yet. I think that there are discrepancies in different jurisdictions based on volume of cases. Baltimore City ACC has heard 400 cases already. That is obviously a significant, you can draw a little bit more of an inference just based on, again, not not a member of this board, but from just a sort of common sense standpoint, 400 is significantly more than what the ACC has reviewed. It gives them additional information to say, okay, well, there's this number of cases involving these kinds of complaints, these numbers of complaints coming from this precinct. Most jurisdictions, from the conversations that Madam Chair and I had at the conference, are in a somewhat similar position to us insofar as they have heard, in some cases more than ours, but not a huge number. I don't know what those boards are going to recommend as far as, or identify as far as trends and recommend as far as policy. But I think, again, we are somewhat later than most in terms of our ACC start time. So we've had less complaints in front of the ACC than some other jurisdictions. But on the whole, it's really the city has had the most, and then we're probably towards the middle. The other large jurisdictions, in some cases, have heard more. And in some cases, you have, for instance, Prince George's County, which has sub jurisdictions. It has all the cities, College Park, Greenbelt, that all have their own police departments. So that has led to they've identified trends involving those sub jurisdictions that we do not have.
There's no other rumblings about other like legislative things that need to maybe change.
So the conversations that I've had, this is the only one that has risen to the level of being flagged across jurisdictions. There may be some, I know that last year Anne Arundel County made some other recommended changes, but those were in many cases, I believe, at their councilmanic level, because some jurisdictions put significant additional information in their county statute versus Baltimore County, which is very similar to the county state code. So for instance, those counties put in additional geographic restrictions, like Frederick County, for instance, has a certain number that must be from the city of Frederick, but a certain of it also must not be from the city of Frederick. So that kind of change was not relevant for us. But again, that's the only policy change that was flagged as a statewide issue that raised concern of the other PABs.
Would it be helpful to have a number in here of cases that are pending review?
So that would essentially be handled through, I mean, I can look into it with work internal affairs, because on page 9 for the complaint data, it's somewhat reflective of if there are X number of community complaints and X number of cases that have been heard, it sort of gives you an idea there. But because of the July 1 date, I can see if I can get that information from IA.
But it's going to get a lot busier.
We'll have public comment right next. Okay,
So again, just if members of the board want to email me to recommend any changes, again, only so that it can be formatted with the rest of the complaint, and not the complaint, the report, so that it doesn't cause any issues where Ms. LaValle and I are trying to add it in during the meeting and make sure that it doesn't short circuit the whole thing with Microsoft Word. But yeah, so in terms of procedurally, because if there would be a motion to adopt the report, but there would also be, again, before that, motions to amend the report to include X, or motion to amend the report to remove something else. So that would be the procedural approach, just so everybody's on the same page with that.
I have a correction. Page 9, the November 3rd ACC meeting, it was failure to enforce protective order, not a peace order. Thank you.
You done?
thanks everyone for your patience. So now we're going to move into
Can I
our,
give an ACC update?
Yes.
Sorry.
did I skip?
That's okay.
No, it's.
It's okay. The
I
ACC,
apologize.
that's okay, met most recently on November 3rd. We did review 3 files sent by Internal Affairs. The first file, the lead complaint, was failure to enforce a protective order. That officer was not charged and was exonerated. The second complaint alleged the officer had a lack of knowledge of residency laws. That officer was not charged and was exonerated. The third file, the officer was accused of stealing a license plate from a citizen and profiling them, and that officer was not charged and was exonerated. We currently have 4 files pending deliberation for our December 8th meeting. That number can always change depending on when and what we receive from Internal Affairs, but as of today, it's 4 files.
Thank you, Dawn.
Oh, sorry, and none of those cases from November 3rd were use of force allegations.
Good.
Thank you, Dawn. I appreciate that. Any questions for Dawn? Yeah. If not, now we will move forward with our public comment. Yes, please identify yourself.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
My comment has to do with dependency issues.
For the record, can you just, we know who you are, but can you get a little closer and identify yourself so that on the record? It's good to see you.
Thank you. Likewise. Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Peter Richards. And I had a couple of suggestions regarding the annual report. With regard to your suggestion for addressing the identified problem that was recognized by all of the jurisdictions, or you think that there's a loophole or a gap, I would suggest that you include some language to address forwarding that to our legislative delegation. So that it's not just here, but that the word actually gets to our group of legislators. They're in the process of developing legislation now for the session that starts January 10th. So, and I believe some of our delegation members are on the relevant committees who would be addressing this kind of a change for this particular. So that might be productive in getting something to actually happen as a result of your observations. My other suggestion is, you haven't mentioned this, but I would like to make sure that you all have the resources that you need. And so if in the course of this past year, you've identified something that is lacking, resources that might be beneficial to you all, I think it would be appropriate to pass that recommendation on to the county executive and the county council. And those of us in the advocacy community would certainly be willing to support making sure that the PAB does have what it needs to do a job effectively, especially now that you have stood up ACC and trial boards. Those actions may have prompted things in your minds about what would facilitate the work that you're trying to accomplish.
Thank you so much. Ruth.
We have I didn't share this, but let me share the timer here to avoid the loud beeps. I just decided to use what the planning board uses and to use a much less obtrusive way to the lot less beeping for the timer for folks.
Retiring the Henry Calgary Memorial Time Clock.
Yes, I did see that we had Madam Chair, that there's a member of the public on WebEx who had a
Okay.
comment, and then we have a member as well here. So Kelly, do you want to unmute that member?
One more and then, sorry.
Oh, you actually just left click on it, not right click. No, you don't make it up. There you go.
Hello,
Hello?
can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Bianca Hughley. Thank you for unmuting me. I see I'm timed, unlike the other person that just spoke. But I just wanted to touch on a few things, and hopefully this can help you in your process. A little background about me: I am a citizen of Baltimore County for over 12 years. I am a native of New York City, and I worked for the Baltimore County Police Department for 5 years. During those 5 years, I experienced a lot of discrimination, and I've seen firsthand the things that can go on at the police department. As a citizen, I experienced some horrid experiences last year that led to me filing internal complaints and led to me even having a case go before the ACC. I know Major Gorman just spoke with you, and I just wanted to say, from a citizen standpoint, I had a case that was well over a year and a day with internal affairs that was eventually closed out that was a use of force case and a sexual assault case from a police officer. So cases do go beyond a year and a day from the police department standpoint. Again, as far as the ACC, I had a captain exonerated after he had me falsely arrested. And I'm not sure if they had that information, but I know Joan stated that she was confused about my complaint and it wasn't investigated. So, from a citizen standpoint, there are things that need to be changed on the legislative side because complaints do go beyond the year and a day. They very well do. And there are things that the ACC are not receiving in the investigative files that they should be privy to. Also, as many of you know, especially Mr. Calgary, I attended the ACC meeting on November 3rd because, like I stated, I'm a resident of Baltimore County. I was a former employee of the police department. I'm very invested in what the PAB and the ACC has to do. And it was just astonishing to me that when I listened back to the recording, that the members of the ACC was taken aback at my presence. I thought this was an open place for citizens to attend. And I heard Mr. Calgary state several times that the recording was still going. And then Miss Tiffany Justice had raised the issue of police protection or security protection for members of the ACC. Mr. Calgary was right. There's no extra protections. I just find it funny that that was raised, but I wanted to give some advice to those members. Your job is important and your safety is also important. And if anyone feels in danger, I feel like Mr. Calgary said it best. You can go use the same laws that anybody else could use. But Ms. Justice has a right to search her name on Maryland Judiciary Case Search. And if her address is present, she can go to the courthouse and shield her address from the public. But that does not admonish her job. And if she's fearful, she should step down for the interest of the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Kevin Shaw.
Hi.
Because I want to know about England. We don't want to do that job. How what's going on, the situation we in right now. Because everybody try to help, since we talked to the police officer in Golda, they want to do nothing about our situations going in.
So my name is Misha Crawford, and I'm currently right now a victim. Me and my son, who's 11 years old, we're the victims of a gang stalking situation. And so this gang is the MS-13 gang. What happened was, since it's gang related, I met a guy off of Tinder dating them. And so when I broke up with him, started stalking me in person near his home at his job, which is, this is my child's father right here. His name is Eric Brennan. This is my friend Kevin Shaw, and he's seen the gang member actually near our home, just sitting there watching us. So what happened was that this gang actually went and targeted all my friends who have known my entire life, and they were actually told to stay away from me, otherwise they're going to get harmed too. But this gang wants to actually shoot me and my son, otherwise they want money, $250,000. This is what I was told by a lot of people. I have told the police about this in precinct 12 multiple times. I've had witnesses go in and speak to the police, and the detective over there, his name is Strickland. He said that he does not believe what's going on, and he just tells everybody to stay away. So my question is, what can be done if the police are not helping in the situation? I have photographs, I have witnesses speaking up, I have a lot of screenshots, because what they do is they create a lot of fake accounts on social media. And so it has stuff to do with my son's name on there with guns and shooting. So I'd like to know what can be done. That's the reason why I attended this meeting.
Okay.
So, pause for a second here. Without, again, we can't, no one on this board nor anyone else can provide legal advice in this situation. But if you have a complaint against a member of a law enforcement agency, in this case, Baltimore County Police Department, our website offers a complaint portal as is the Baltimore County Police Department website itself. And if you have a complaint to file, I can also provide you with that link as well after the meeting as well, if you want to stick around for a moment.
Because I did file several police complaints to internal affairs against this detective, because he was the main one working with this case. And they said it's not police misconduct or anything. And so they just left it at that. So we're still stuck in the same situation.
We are sorry for your situation or dilemma, especially concerned for your safety. And as Mr. Calgary mentioned, we'll make sure you get the correct website and the person to reach out to.
Very much.
Thank you. If there's no one else, no further public comment, we're going to move down to, then the next meeting is scheduled for December 18th, 12 o'clock in the same room. And want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving and hope everyone stays safe and be able to take time and enjoy family. At this time, we'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Right. I move that we adjourn this meeting until our December 18th meeting at 12 o'clock in the same room.
Is there a second?
Second.
Probably move in second. If there's no further discussion, this meeting is hereby adjourned. Thank you so much, everyone. Get home safe.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody. I think y'all did a great job with your draft.
Thank you so much.
For first time looking.